If you asked anyone in our family, they'd tell you my sister, Rachel, had the perfect life. She married Jake, her college sweetheart, 5 years ago, and they were one of those annoyingly cute couples that seemed to have it all: the big house in the suburbs, successful careers, and plans to start a family. Rachel and I have always been close. She's my older sister by 3 years, my best friend, my confidant. So when she called me in tears one night, saying, "I don't know what to do, but I think Jake's hiding something," I was floored. "What do you mean, hiding something?" I asked. "I don't know," she whispered. "But something's wrong. I can feel it." At the time, I didn't realize how deep the rabbit hole would go or how Jake's secret would shatter everything we thought we knew about him, and about each other. The suspicious behavior. Rachel first noticed something was off about 6 months before her call. Jake started working late more often, coming home exhausted and irritable. When she asked what was wrong, he brushed her off, claiming it was just stress from work. But then little things started piling up: unexplained charges on their credit card, missed calls from unknown numbers on Jake's phone, and a sudden uptick in his need for alone time. At first, Rachel thought maybe he was having an affair. It was the obvious assumption, right? She even confronted him about it one night, but Jake denied everything. "You're being paranoid," he said, laughing it off. "You know I'd never do that to you." And for a while, Rachel let it go. But the nagging feeling in her gut wouldn't go away, bringing me into the loop. When Rachel finally confided in me, she sounded desperate. "I don't want to jump to conclusions," she said, "but something's not right, and I can't ignore it anymore." I suggested she talk to him again, but Rachel had already tried that, multiple times. Every conversation ended the same way: Jake would get defensive, accuse her of overthinking, and then shut down. "I feel like I'm going crazy," Rachel said. "What if I'm imagining this?" "You're not crazy," I assured her. "You know him better than anyone. If you think something's wrong, it probably is." That's when she dropped the bombshell. I went through his phone. I froze. Rachel was the last person I'd expect to do something like that. "And?" I asked cautiously. She hesitated. "There's nothing incriminating. No texts from other women, no secret apps. But he's been getting a lot of emails from someone named Margot." "Who's Margot?" "I don't know," Rachel admitted. "But I looked her up on Facebook, and she's definitely not a coworker. She lives in another state. Why would Jake be emailing her so much?" Digging deeper. Rachel and I decided to dig a little deeper, though I felt uneasy about it. Jake had always been like a brother to me, and I didn't want to believe he was capable of something shady. We started with the credit card statements. Most of the charges were normal: groceries, gas, takeout. But there was one recurring payment to a company we didn't recognize: Blue Ridge Solutions. "What the hell is Blue Ridge Solutions?" Rachel asked. I pulled out my laptop and did some Googling. It turned out to be a financial services company specializing in debt consolidation. "Debt consolidation?" Rachel said, confused. "Jake and I don't have any debt." "Maybe you don't," I said. "But what if Jake does?" The confrontation. Armed with the information about Blue Ridge Solutions, Rachel confronted Jake again. This time, he didn't laugh it off. Instead, he froze, his face turning pale. "Where did you hear about that?" he asked. "I saw the charges on our credit card," Rachel said. "What's going on, Jake? Are you in debt?" Jake finally admitted that he'd been struggling with debt for years, long before they got married. He'd racked up tens of thousands of dollars in student loans, credit card bills, and personal loans, but he'd kept it hidden from Rachel. "I didn't want you to think less of me," he said. "I thought I could handle it on my own, but it just kept getting worse." Rachel was furious. "You lied to me for years, Jake. How could you keep something like this from me?" "I was ashamed," he said, tears streaming down his face. "I didn't want you to know what a mess I am." The bigger secret. For a moment, it seemed like that was the worst of it. Rachel was hurt, but she said she wanted to help Jake work through his debt. She even suggested they see a financial counselor together. But then something didn't sit right with me. If Jake's debt was the big secret, why was he emailing someone named Margot? When I asked Rachel about it, she shook her head. "I don't know. He swears there's nothing going on, but I can't shake the feeling that he's still hiding something." She decided to confront him about Margot directly. When she brought it up, Jake's reaction was strange. He didn't deny knowing Margot, but he refused to explain who she was. "It's complicated," he said. "What's complicated about it?" Rachel demanded. "Are you cheating on me?" "No," Jake said firmly. "I've never cheated on you, Rachel. But Margot, she's not someone I can just stop talking to." That's when Rachel called me, panicked. "What does that even mean? Who the hell is this woman?" Uncovering the truth. Rachel and I decided to find out who Margot really was. It felt wrong, snooping like this, but Jake's cryptic response left us no choice. Rachel remembered that Jake had left his laptop at home one day, so we took the opportunity to check his email. Most of the messages were work-related or spam, but then we found a folder labeled Margot. Inside were dozens of emails, dating back years. As we read through them, the truth began to unravel. Margot wasn't a lover. She was Jake's sister. A family Jake never told us about. Jake had grown up believing he was an only child, raised by a single mom who worked tirelessly to support him. But when he was in his early 20s, his mom confessed that he had an older half-sister from a relationship she'd had before Jake was born. Margot had been put up for adoption as a baby, and Jake's mom had never told him about her until Margot reached out one day, wanting to connect. Jake and Margot had been emailing ever since, trying to build a relationship. But he never told Rachel about it. I didn't know how to explain it, Jake admitted later. It felt so personal, and I didn't want to drag you into my mom's mistakes. The fallout. Rachel was furious. How many secrets are you keeping from me, Jake? First the debt, now a secret sister? What else aren't you telling me? Jake apologized profusely, saying he never meant to hurt her. But Rachel wasn't ready to forgive him. Our parents got involved at this point, and the family became divided. My mom sided with Rachel, saying Jake had betrayed her trust. My dad, however, thought Rachel was overreacting. So he has a sister, my dad said. Big deal. That doesn't change who he is. But for Rachel, it wasn't just about the secrets, it was about the pattern of dishonesty. Where things stand now. It's been a few months since all of this came to light, and Rachel and Jake are still trying to repair their relationship. They've started seeing a marriage counselor, but Rachel says it feels like starting over. As for Jake, he's been working hard to regain her trust. He's introduced Rachel to Margot, who turned out to be kind and genuinely interested in being part of our family. But Rachel still struggles with the knowledge that Jake kept so much from her. The whole ordeal has made me question a lot about trust, honesty, and the secrets people carry. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that even the perfect couple can have cracks beneath the surface, and sometimes, those cracks can change everything. Update: my sister's husband's secret turned our family inside out. Hi everyone. Thanks to those who commented on my original post, offering support and advice for Rachel and Jake's situation. It's been a few more months since everything came to light, and I wanted to share how things have unfolded since then. A lot has happened, some of it surprising, some of it painful, but we're all trying to move forward. Jake and Rachel. Let's start with Rachel and Jake, since their relationship was the center of this mess. After months of marriage counseling, Rachel told me she finally feels like she's starting to trust Jake again. She admitted it's been incredibly hard to rebuild that trust, but Jake has been putting in the work. He's being more honest with me now than he ever was before, Rachel said during one of our phone calls. I didn't realize how much he was holding back, even in the little things. But he's trying, and I see that. Jake has been more transparent about his finances, too. He showed Rachel all of his credit reports, walked her through his debt repayment plan, and they've even started working with a financial advisor together. It turns out he'd been struggling with the guilt of his debt for so long that it became easier for him to just hide. The counseling has helped him unpack that guilt and understand how his secrecy affected Rachel. I never meant to hurt her, Jake admitted to me one day. I thought I was protecting her by keeping it all to myself. But now I see that keeping her in the dark was worse than the truth ever could have been. Rachel says their relationship isn't perfect, it'll take time to fully heal, but they're moving in the right direction. Margot. Margot, Jake's half-sister, has also become a surprising part of this story. After years of emailing Jake in secret, she's now been introduced to Rachel and the rest of the family. Rachel was hesitant at first. I didn't know what to expect, she said. I thought I'd resent her because of everything that happened. But when I met her, I realized she's not the problem, Jake is the one who should have been honest from the start. Margot has been nothing but kind and understanding throughout this process. She apologized to Rachel for the secrecy and explained that she never wanted to cause problems. She just wanted to get to know her brother. Now, Margot has started attending family events, and even though it's still a little awkward, she's making an effort to fit in. She's also become a bit of a sounding board for Rachel, which is ironic given how things started. She gets it, Rachel told me. She's been through her own family drama, and she doesn't judge me for being upset with Jake. Honestly, I think I like her more than I like him right now. The rest of the family. As expected, the rest of our family has had mixed reactions to everything. My mom has softened her stance on Jake, which I think is partly because she sees how hard he's working to make things right. I still don't agree with what he did, she told me, but I can't fault him for trying to fix it. My dad, on the other hand, continues to play devil's advocate. He still thinks Rachel overreacted, and every time he brings it up, it causes tension. Rachel's patience with him is wearing thin, and she's told me more than once that she needs him to just stay out of it. As for me, I'm somewhere in the middle. I understand Rachel's hurt, but I also see Jake's genuine effort to make amends. It's been hard to navigate because I want to support my sister without alienating Jake, who's always been like a brother to me. Where things stand. Right now, the family is slowly finding its new normal. Jake and Rachel are doing better, but they both admit there's a long road ahead. Margot is becoming a regular part of our lives, and I think she's helping more than she realizes by just being there and showing grace to everyone involved. The biggest change, though, is Rachel's perspective on her marriage. I used to think love was enough to keep a relationship strong, she told me recently. But now I know trust and communication are just as important. Without those, love doesn't mean much. It's a lesson none of us expected to learn, but maybe that's the silver lining in all of this. Families are messy, relationships are complicated, and people make mistakes. But if there's one thing I've seen, it's that even when things fall apart, they can be put back together, piece by painful piece. I'll update again if anything major happens, but for now, I'm hopeful that we're all moving in the right direction. Thank you to everyone who's followed this story and offered your thoughts. It's been a wild ride, but I'm grateful for the perspective and support. Major update: my sister's husband's secret turned our family inside out. Hi everyone, I didn't expect to be back with another update so soon, but something major has happened that's completely shifted the dynamics of this story. Just when I thought we were all on the path to healing, a new layer of Jake's past came to light, and it's thrown our family into chaos once again. I'll dive right in, but buckle up, this one's messy. A new secret comes out. Things had been relatively calm for a while. Rachel and Jake were doing well in counseling, and Margot was settling into her role as Jake's newly revealed half-sister. We thought the worst was behind us, but a few weeks ago, Rachel found something that changed everything. Jake left his phone on the kitchen counter while he went to the gym. Rachel wasn't snooping this time, but a notification popped up from an unknown number that read, "Hey, when are you going to tell Rachel about us? This is getting ridiculous." Rachel froze. She stared at the message, unsure whether to open it or pretend she hadn't seen it. In the end, curiosity and panic won out, and she opened the conversation. What she found was a months-long text thread between Jake and another woman. The other woman. The woman's name was Vanessa, and from the texts, it became clear that she and Jake had been in a relationship for years. Rachel read messages about how much Jake missed Vanessa, how he wished things could be simpler, and how he promised he'd figure it all out soon. Even worse, Vanessa mentioned a child. A son. Rachel was in total shock. When Jake got home, she confronted him immediately. According to Rachel, he tried to deny it at first, claiming Vanessa was just a crazy ex who was trying to stir up trouble. But Rachel had the receipts, literally. She showed him the texts, and Jake finally admitted the truth. Vanessa wasn't an ex. She was someone he had been seeing on and off for 5 years. And the child? A 3-year-old boy. Rachel's world falls apart. Rachel called me that night, completely devastated. "I don't even know who I'm married to anymore," she sobbed. "How could he lie about something like this? How could he look me in the eye every day and act like everything was fine?" I didn't know what to say. The debt, the hidden sister, and now an affair and a secret child? It felt like Jake's entire life was built on lies. The next day, Rachel told Jake to pack a bag and leave the house. He didn't argue. He just looked at her with tears in his eyes and said, "I didn't mean for it to happen like this." The truth about Vanessa. Over the next week, Rachel pieced together the full story. Vanessa had been someone Jake met during a rough patch in their marriage. He claimed it started as a fling but turned into something more over time. When Vanessa got pregnant, Jake panicked. He didn't want to leave Rachel, but he also didn't want to abandon Vanessa or the baby. So, he tried to live a double life. He paid child support to Vanessa, visited their son occasionally, and kept it all hidden from Rachel. "I thought I could keep everything separate," Jake told Rachel during one of their final conversations. "I didn't want to lose you, but I couldn't walk away from them either." The family's reaction. When Rachel told the rest of the family, it was like dropping a bomb. My mom, who had been cautiously supportive of Jake up until now, completely turned on him. "I can't believe I ever defended that man," she said. "He's a liar and a cheat, and Rachel deserves so much better." My dad was quieter but equally furious. "He had a responsibility to be honest," he said. To Rachel and to us. "He's burned every bridge he had in this family." Even Margot, who had been trying to build a relationship with Jake, distanced herself. "I can't trust him after this," she told me. "I thought he was just flawed, but this goes beyond that. This is betrayal." Rachel's next steps. Rachel has officially filed for divorce. She's heartbroken, of course, but she says she can't stay married to someone who's lied to her so profoundly. This isn't the life I signed up for, she told me. I deserve better, and I'm done pretending Jake can be the man I thought he was. She's also started seeing a therapist on her own, in addition to the marriage counseling they were doing before. She says it's helping her process everything and figure out what she wants moving forward. Story 2. My mom's secret past destroyed my parents' marriage, and our family along with it. When I was a kid, my parents were the couple everyone admired. They were high school sweethearts who built a life from scratch, raising 3 kids in a modest but happy home. My dad worked as a contractor, my mom stayed home to take care of us, and they seemed like the perfect team. If you asked me a year ago, I would have said my family was solid, unshakable. But that illusion came crashing down 6 months ago when I accidentally uncovered a secret that my mom had been hiding for decades. How it all started. It all began when my parents decided to downsize and move into a smaller house. With my siblings and me grown and out of the house, it made sense. I volunteered to help them pack up, which meant spending hours digging through old boxes and closets. One day, while I was sorting through a box of old papers in the attic, I found a stack of letters tucked inside an envelope labeled "Private." I knew I shouldn't read them, but curiosity got the better of me. The letters were love notes, written to my mom. But they weren't from my dad. The mystery man. The letters were from someone named Paul. They were dated before my parents got married but overlapped with the time they were supposedly together. The notes were passionate, talking about secret meetings, plans for the future, and promises of eternal love. At first, I told myself it was probably just a teenage fling, something that didn't mean anything. But then I found one letter that made my stomach drop. "Linda, I can't stop thinking about you. Last night was incredible, and I don't care what he thinks. You're the only one I want." The dates didn't lie. My mom had been seeing Paul while she was dating my dad. Confronting my mom. I couldn't keep this to myself. That night, I drove to my parents' house, letters in hand, and confronted my mom. "Who's Paul?" I asked, holding up the envelope. Her face went pale, and she grabbed the letters from me, flipping through them frantically. "Where did you find these?" she demanded. "In the attic," I said. "Mom, what's going on? Did you cheat on Dad?" She sat down, tears welling up in her eyes, and told me the truth. Paul had been her first love, someone she met before my dad. They'd had a whirlwind romance, but her parents didn't approve of him, so she ended things. But then, after she started dating my dad, she reconnected with Paul. They had an affair that lasted nearly a year, ending only when she found out she was pregnant, with me. The bombshell. "You're not saying what I think you're saying," I said, my voice shaking. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know for sure," she admitted. "I never told Paul the first was pregnant, and I never told your dad there was a chance you might not be his." I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. My entire identity was suddenly in question. Telling my dad. At first, I wasn't going to tell my dad. I figured it was my mom's secret to share, not mine. But I couldn't look him in the eye without feeling like I was lying to him. A week later, I told him everything. I showed him the letters and explained what Mom had told me. He was silent for a long time, staring at the letters like they were in a foreign language. Finally, he said, "We need to talk to her." The fallout. The confrontation between my parents was explosive. My dad demanded answers. Why had she lied? Why hadn't she told him the truth before they got married? My mom tried to explain, saying she didn't want to ruin their relationship and that she truly believed my dad was my father. But my dad wasn't having it. He said he wanted a paternity test to know for sure. My mom begged him not to, saying it didn't matter because he'd raised me, loved me, and been my dad in every way that counted. "It matters to me," he said. The results. The paternity test confirmed my worst fear. Paul was my biological father. My dad was devastated. He moved out of the house shortly after, saying he needed time to think. My mom tried to reach out to him, but he wasn't ready to forgive her. As for me, I felt completely lost. The man I'd called Dad my entire life wasn't actually my father, and the person who was had no idea I even existed. Reaching out to Paul. I wrestled with the idea of contacting Paul for weeks. Part of me didn't want anything to do with him, but another part of me felt like I needed answers. Eventually, I found him on social media and sent him a message. To my surprise, he responded quickly. We arranged to meet, and when I saw him for the first time, I felt an eerie sense of familiarity. He looked just like me. Paul was shocked but thrilled to meet me. He had no idea my mom had been pregnant, and he said he would have stepped up if he'd known. He's been trying to build a relationship with me ever since, but I'm still figuring out how I feel about him. Where we are now. My family is in shambles. My dad has filed for divorce, saying he can't stay married to someone who lied to him for so long. My mom is heartbroken, blaming herself for everything, and she's been trying to make amends. As for me, I'm still trying to process everything. I feel like my entire childhood was a lie, and I don't know how to move forward. I love my dad, he's the one who raised me, who taught me how to ride a bike and cheered me on at every soccer game. But knowing the truth has complicated everything. I never imagined something like this could happen to my family. We used to be so solid, so close. Now, I'm not sure we'll ever be the same again. Thanks for reading, and if anyone has advice on how to navigate something like this, I'm all ears. Major update: my mom's secret past destroyed my parents' marriage, and our family along with it. Hi, everyone. I never expected to have such a massive response to my original post, and I want to thank everyone who reached out with support, advice, and even some tough love. It's been a couple of months since I shared what happened, and a lot has changed. I thought it would be fair to give you all an update because, well, things have taken another turn I never saw coming. My dad struggles. After my dad moved out, I thought he'd just need time to process everything. I hoped that eventually, he might consider working things out with my mom, or at least finding some kind of peace. But it turns out the betrayal hit him much harder than I realized. For the first few weeks, he was staying with a friend and seemed okay. He'd call me occasionally, and while he sounded upset, he was trying to keep things civil. Then his calls started to become less frequent, and when I did hear from him, he sounded different. Bitter. Last month, he called me out of the blue and said, "I've been thinking about the last 30 years, and I don't know what was real anymore." That broke me. My dad, the man who had always been my rock, now questioned everything about his life because of this one secret. He's started seeing a therapist, which I think is a good step, but he's also become distant. He skipped a family dinner my siblings and I tried to organize, saying he couldn't handle being around mom. I understand, but it's hard not to feel like I'm losing him. My mom's attempts to rebuild. My mom, on the other hand, has thrown herself into trying to fix things. She's apologized to everyone 100 times, and while I know she's genuinely sorry, it's hard to let go of the anger I feel toward her. She's also been trying to reconnect with my dad, but he's not interested. He told her point blank that he doesn't see a way forward for their marriage, and he's moving forward with the divorce. My mom says she's still holding out hope, but I think she's starting to realize it might be over for good. She's also been asking me a lot of questions about my meeting with Paul, which has been awkward. She hasn't spoken to Paul since their affair ended decades ago, and I think she's worried about what kind of relationship I'm building with him. My relationship with Paul. Speaking of Paul, things have been complicated. When I first met him, I wasn't sure what to expect. He seemed genuinely excited to get to know me, and part of me was curious about him, too. But the more time I've spent with him, the more conflicted I feel. Paul is nice, but there's this underlying tension between us. He keeps trying to play catch up, asking about my childhood, my hobbies, and my career. I get it, he's trying to connect, but it feels forced, and honestly, it's exhausting. The weirdest part is that he started talking about making up for lost time and wanting to be more involved in my life. I'm 28 years old. I don't need another parent. I tried to explain that to him, but I don't think he fully understands. At the same time, I can't shake this guilt. He didn't know about me, and it wasn't his fault. But I also can't pretend like we can just pick up where things should have started. The sibling divide. One thing I didn't mention in my original post is how my siblings have been handling all of this. My younger brother and sister were shocked by the revelations but had a much different reaction than I did. My brother, let's call him Dan, has taken my dad's side completely. He's furious with my mom and barely speaks to her anymore. He's even gone so far as to say he doesn't want her at his upcoming wedding, which has caused a whole new layer of drama. My sister, let's call her Emily, on the other hand, has been trying to keep the peace. She thinks our dad is being too harsh and that he should try to forgive mom for the sake of the family. That opinion hasn't gone over well with Dan, and now the two of them are barely speaking. It feels like our family is fracturing into separate camps, and I'm stuck in the middle, trying to keep the pieces together. An unexpected twist. Here's the part one wasn't prepared for. Paul reached out to my dad. I didn't even know they were in contact until my dad mentioned it during a phone call. Apparently, Paul sent him a long email apologizing for his role in the affair and offering to meet in person. I don't need an apology from him, my dad said. He's not the one who betrayed me. Your mother did. But despite his anger, my dad agreed to meet with Paul. I have no idea what was said during their conversation, but when I asked my dad about it afterward, all he said was, "He's not what I expected." I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's added a whole new layer of complexity to an already messy situation. Where we are now. So, where does that leave us? Honestly, I'm not sure. My parents' divorce is moving forward, my siblings are at odds, and my relationship with Paul is still up in the air. I'm trying to focus on my own healing, but it's hard when the fallout from all of this feels never-ending. I've started seeing a therapist, which has helped, but there are still days when I feel completely overwhelmed. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that family is complicated. People are flawed, relationships are messy, and sometimes the truth can break everything apart. I wish I had a neat, happy ending to share, but that's not where we are yet. For now, I'm taking it one day at a time and hoping that, eventually, we can all find some kind of peace. Thanks for sticking with me through this journey. I'll post again if there are any major developments.